Elara sat in the cold, dark room, her back against the wall and her arms chained tightly above her head. The metal cuffs dug into her skin, leaving painful marks that burned with every small movement. The air smelled of oil and iron. Every sound outside the door made her heart jump. She had lost track of how many days she had been trapped here, alone and afraid. She remembered her capture clearly. Her ship had crashed on this strange human world, and before she could escape, soldiers had surrounded her. She had fought, but she was outnumbered and weak. They dragged her to this place, this prison, and locked her away like an animal. She knew what would happen next. She had heard the cries of other prisoners through the thin walls. The humans tortured aliens like her. They wanted information, secrets, and they would hurt her until she gave them what they wanted. Elara sat in silence, trying to prepare herself for the pain. She told herself she would not break. She would not give them what they wanted. Then, the door opened. A tall human soldier stepped inside. He wore a black uniform with sharp silver buttons, and his face was hard and serious. She had heard the others call him Captain Ryan. He was the one in charge here. Her heart pounded as she lowered her gaze to the floor, waiting for him to strike her or shout cruel words. But nothing happened. She heard no angry voice, no tools of pain. Instead, she heard a soft clink on the ground. Slowly, she raised her eyes. Captain Ryan had placed a small metal cup on the floor. Inside, it was filled with clear water. Without a word, he stepped back, standing quietly near the door. Elara stared at the cup, unsure. Was this a trick? Would he attack her when? She moved. Her throat was dry, and her lips cracked. She needed water badly. Her body shook with thirst. After a long pause, she slowly crawled forward, dragging her chains along the floor. Every movement hurt, but she kept going. When she reached the cup, she took it in her shaking hands and drank quickly. The water was cool and clean. It felt like life itself flowing into her broken body. Captain Ryan watched her without speaking. Then, just as quietly as he had come, he turned and left the room, locking the door behind him. Elara sat still, confused. Why had he brought her water? Why didn't he hurt her? That night, she could not sleep. Her mind spun with questions. Was this a new game to break her spirit? The next day, the door opened again. This time, Ryan carried a small plate with bread and fruit. Real food, not the tasteless gray paste she had been given before. Again, he placed it near her and waited. Again, Elara hesitated, but hunger won. She crawled forward, took the food, and ate. She kept her eyes on Ryan, waiting for the moment when he would show his true face and hurt her. But that moment never came. Days passed like this. Every day, Ryan brought her water and food. He never spoke, never laughed, never looked cruel. Elara watched him carefully. She felt her fear changing into curiosity. Why was this human treating her with kindness? What did he want? He was supposed to be her enemy. He was supposed to hurt her, not feed her. One evening, something strange happened. Ryan entered as usual, but this time he carried a small key in his hand. Without a word, he walked over to her and bent down. Elara froze in fear, thinking he was going to attack her at last. But instead, he unlocked the chains around her wrists. For the first time since she was captured, her hands were free. She held them close to her chest, shocked. She felt the blood rush back into her arms, bringing pain and relief at the same time. Ryan sat down in the corner of the room. His face was calm. Then, finally, he spoke in a soft, careful voice. "You are not my enemy," he said. His words were simple, but they struck deep inside her. Elara could not believe them. How could a human say that? How could this man free her and speak kindly? Was this another trick? She stayed where she was, not moving, not speaking. Her heart beat fast. She didn't know what to do or say. Ryan made no move to chain her again. He simply sat in silence for a few minutes, then stood up and left the room, locking the door as he always did. Alara sat alone in the dark. She looked down at her wrists, now free of chains. She touched them gently, feeling the rough skin wear. The cuffs had cut her. For the first time since her capture, she felt a spark of hope inside her chest. She whispered to herself in the quiet, "Why is he doing this? What does he want from me?" That night, she could not sleep again. But this time, it was not only fear that kept her awake, it was curiosity. Tomorrow, she promised herself, she would find out who Captain Ryan really was, and why he was treating her like no other human had. Alara sat quietly in the dim cell, her hands finally free from the heavy chains, but her mind still trapped in confusion. The human soldier, Captain Ryan, had unlocked her cuffs the night before and spoken gentle words. But she did not know why. She still believed this could be a trick, a new way to break her spirit. Humans were known for cruelty, not kindness, or so she had always been told. Her heart remained guarded as she waited for the next step in this strange game. The door creaked open. Her breath caught. Would today be different? Would he reveal his true purpose now? But when Ryan stepped inside, he carried no weapons, no instruments of pain. Instead, in his hands was a tray of fresh food, bread, fruit, and a bowl of warm soup. Without a word, he placed it on the floor and looked at her calmly. Alara stayed still. Her mind screamed warnings, but her body was hungry. Slowly, she crawled forward and took the food. Her eyes stayed locked on Ryan as she ate, expecting him to attack at any moment. But he didn't. He simply stood there, silent and still, watching her with an expression she could not understand. When she finished eating, Ryan bent down again, this time placing a folded cloth beside her. "For your wounds," he said softly. Then he turned and left, locking the door behind him. Alara picked up the cloth and stared at it. It was clean and soft, a gift she never expected to receive here. She touched the sores on her wrists where the metal had torn her skin and gently wrapped them with the cloth. As she did, a strange feeling grew inside her, something she had not felt in a long time. Safety, but she still could not trust him. Not yet. Why was he doing this? What did he want? Was this a test? Would he soon demand something terrible in return for his kindness? The next day, when the door opened again, Ryan spoke first. "Alara," he said, calling her by name. She froze. How did he know her name? "You are not my enemy," he repeated, his voice quiet but firm. Then he knelt in front of her, not as a guard, but as if he was lowering himself to her level. "I will help you," he whispered. Alara's mind raced. Help her? Why would a human soldier say this? She looked into his eyes, searching for cruelty, for deceit, but all she saw was honesty. She wanted to believe him, but she couldn't let herself fall into a trap. Still, his actions continued to puzzle her. That night, he brought her a blanket. The cell had always been cold, but with the blanket wrapped around her thin body, she felt warm for the first time since her capture. And every day after that, Ryan came back with food, water, and quiet care. He never shouted, never hurt her. His kindness was silent but powerful, and it slowly began to break through the walls she had built around her heart. Alara began to notice small things about him. How he never smiled when other soldiers made cruel jokes about prisoners. How he avoided looking at the cameras on the walls as if he was hiding something. She started to wonder, was Ryan hiding her from his own people? One evening, after he placed her meal on the floor, Ryan spoke again. "They think you are dangerous," he said quietly. "But I know you are not." Alara couldn't stop herself from speaking this time. Her voice was soft and dry. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. It was the first question she had spoken aloud since her capture. Ryan sat down on the floor near her, leaving space between them. He rested his elbows on his knees and looked at the ground. "Akuz, I see you are not what they say you are. You don't deserve this." His voice trembled slightly. And because this is wrong, his words sank deep into her heart. She stared at him in silence, her mind full of questions. Did all humans think like him? Or was he different? Could she trust him? The next day, something even stranger happened. When Ryan came in, he carried no tray, no blanket. Instead, he knelt beside her and whispered, "There is a way out. I can help you escape." Ilara's body stiffened. Escape? Her heart raced with fear and hope. Could this really be true? Or was this the moment when the trap would snap shut? Ryan saw her hesitation. "I mean it," he said softly. "But you have to trust me." Trust. That word echoed in her mind long after he left the cell. Could she trust this man who brought her food and warmth? Could she believe a human soldier who offered freedom? That night, wrapped in the blanket he had given her, Ilara sat awake, thinking. Tomorrow, she would have to decide. Stay and wait for the unknown, or take a chance and trust the silent kindness of Captain Ryan. The next morning, Ilara sat against the cold wall of her cell, thinking deeply about Ryan's offer. Her mind was a storm of doubt and hope. For so many days, he had shown her quiet kindness. He had brought her clean water, food, a blanket, and had freed her wrists. His gentle voice and calm eyes were so different from the guards who laughed cruelly outside her door. But could she trust him now when he spoke of escape? Was this a trap to test her loyalty or to trick her into doing something that would give them a reason to punish her? Her heart pounded every time she thought about it. Freedom was something she had dreamed about since the first day she was captured. But freedom was also dangerous. If she tried to run and failed, she knew the punishment would be worse than anything she had faced before. As she sat thinking, the door opened quietly. Ryan stepped inside, his face serious. He carried no tray today. Instead, he crouched near her, his voice low and steady. "Ilara," he whispered, "tonight is our chance. A supply truck is coming late, and security will be weaker. I can guide you through the back corridors, but we must move fast and silently." Ilara looked into his eyes, searching again for lies. But she saw only urgency and something else, something almost like guilt. She nodded slowly, her throat dry. She had made her decision. She would take the risk. That evening, Ryan returned, just before the shift change. He wore a heavy, dark coat and carried another one for her. "Wear this," he said softly, handing her the coat. "It will help hide you from the cameras." His hands moved quickly as he helped her put it on, his fingers careful not to hurt her sore wrists. When she was ready, he moved to the door and held up a finger. "Follow me closely," he whispered, "and do not speak, no matter what happens. Stay quiet." Her heart beat faster as he unlocked the door. For the first time in so many days, she stepped outside her cell. The hallway was dim, and the cold air outside the cell felt sharp against her skin. Ryan walked quickly, checking each corner before they moved. Ilara followed, her steps soft but quick, her breath shallow with fear. They passed two guards who stood laughing near the mess hall. Ryan paused, turning to her, and placed a finger to his lips. Ilara nodded. They slipped past quietly, hugging the shadows. Every step felt dangerous. Every sound felt like an alarm. Ryan led her down a narrow staircase that smelled of oil and dust. At the bottom was a locked door. He pulled out a small key and unlocked it carefully. Behind the door was a service tunnel, dark and narrow. The air inside was damp and cold. "This way," he whispered. They moved quickly, their footsteps echoing softly. Ilara's eyes adjusted to the darkness. but her fear only grew. What if this was where he would betray her? What if soldiers waited at the other end of this tunnel? But Ryan kept walking, checking behind them often to make sure she was still following. His behavior made her heart beat in a strange way, a mix of fear and something softer, something she could not yet name. Halfway through the tunnel, they heard footsteps behind them. Ryan froze and pulled her into a dark alcove, holding her arm, gently but firmly. Two soldiers passed by, laughing and talking, unaware of the two figures hiding in the shadows. When the soldiers were gone, Ryan leaned close to her ear. "Almost there," he whispered. They reached a metal door at the end of the tunnel. Ryan checked a small panel on the wall and entered a code. The door clicked open slightly. A rush of cool night air hit Alara's face. She felt her chest fill with hope, but also fear. This was it, her chance to leave, her chance to be free. But just as Ryan pushed the door wider, a loud alarm blared through the base. Red lights flashed in the tunnel. Guards shouted from far away. Ryan spun around quickly. "They've discovered your empty cell," he said urgently. "We have to go now." Lara's fear exploded inside her. She wanted to run, but her legs felt weak. Ryan grabbed her hand not roughly, but firmly and pulled her toward the door. "Trust me," he shouted over the alarm. Outside, she saw the open ground of the base's edge. Just a few hundred steps stood between her and the trees beyond the fence. But there were guards running now, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Ryan pulled her behind a large supply crate, hiding from the lights. His breathing was fast, but his eyes stayed calm. "When I say run," he whispered, "you run as fast as you can. Don't stop. Don't look back." Alara nodded, fear and adrenaline mixing inside her. She clenched her fists and prepared herself. Ryan squeezed her shoulder gently. "I will hold them back," he said. "You can make it." For a moment, Alara's eyes met his. She didn't understand why this human was helping her, risking his own life. But there was no time for questions. "Run!" he shouted. Elara bolted from behind the crate, her feet pounding against the ground as the alarm wailed around her. Behind her, she heard shouts, gunfire, and the sound of Ryan drawing all the attention away from her. The night air filled her lungs as she ran for her life toward freedom, toward the unknown, and away from the cold prison that had once felt like her grave. Alara ran as fast as she could, Keho breaths sharp in her chest, her legs aching from exhaustion and fear. The cold night air rushed past her face as the alarm blared behind her, red lights flashing across the compound. She heard loud voices and the sharp crack of gunfire, but she did not stop. Ryan's words repeated in her mind. "Don't stop. Don't look back." But even as she sprinted toward the fence at the edge of the base, doubt crept into her thoughts. What if this was all a trick? What if Ryan had led her into the open just so the guards could shoot her as she ran? She had been a prisoner for so long, it was hard to believe any human would truly help her. Her lungs burned as she reached the fence. It was tall, with sharp wires at the top. But just as Ryan had promised, a section of the fence near the far corner had been cut open. She crouched low, squeezing through the gap, the metal wires catching her clothes and scratching her skin. When she crawled out the other side, she fell into soft grass. She quickly scrambled to her feet and ran again, this time into the darkness of the trees beyond the fence. The alarm grew quieter behind her, but her fear did not fade. She hid behind a thick tree trunk and finally allowed herself to breathe. She was outside, free, but where was Ryan? She turned to look back at the base, even though he had told her not to. Through the gaps in the trees, she could see guards running across the yard, their flashlights shining wildly. Then she saw him standing near the gate, shouting at the other soldiers. He was pointing in the opposite direction from where she had run, drawing them away from her trail. Her chest tightened. He was helping her, truly helping her. And now he was in danger because of it. Suddenly, a soldier appeared near the fence. His flashlight sweeping the ground, Lara crouched lower, holding her breath. The light passed close, but did not stop. Then she heard Ryan's voice, loud and commanding, pulling the guards away once again. But her mind was full of questions. Why was Ryan doing this? Why was he risking everything for her? He could have left her in the cell and no one would have blamed him. Instead, he had chosen to help. Ilara stayed hidden for several more minutes, watching the chaos inside the base. Then she heard something that froze her blood. An order shouted over the loudspeakers. "Captain Ryan is under arrest. All guards detain him immediately." Her heart sank. Ryan was caught. He had sacrificed himself for her freedom. Tears filled her eyes, but she forced herself to stay quiet. She could not help him now, not without being captured again. She turned and moved deeper into the trees, her steps careful and silent. But inside, her mind was in turmoil. She felt guilt and sadness and confusion all at once. The forest was dark, and every sound made her jump. The wind in the leaves, the crack of a twig, the distant howl of an animal, all of it felt dangerous. But she kept moving, heading away from the base. Away from the place where she had been a prisoner. After what felt like hours, she finally stopped to rest near a fallen tree. She sat down, wrapping the heavy coat around her body, remembering how Ryan had carefully placed it on her shoulders before they escaped. Even here, far from the walls of her prison, his kindness followed her as she sat in the darkness. She remembered the way he had looked at her in the cell, his eyes calm, his voice soft. She remembered how he had spoken gently when everyone else had treated her like an enemy. "You are not my enemy," he had said. She had not believed him at first, but now she knew it was true. Her heart ached. He had risked everything so she could be free. And now he was paying the price for that choice. Ilara closed her eyes and made a silent promise. If she survived this, if she found her way back to her people, she would return one day. She would come back for him. Ryan had given her freedom, and she would not forget. As dawn began to break and the first light touched the sky, Ilara stood up. She pulled the coat tight around her and took her first true breath as a free person. But she knew this was not the end. It was only the beginning of her journey, and Ryan's sacrifice would guide every step she took. Her path was uncertain, and danger was everywhere. But deep in her heart, she now carried something she had thought was lost forever: hope. And as she walked deeper into the forest, far from the prison that had tried to break her, she whispered one last time to the wind, "Thank you, Ryan." Ilara moved deeper into the forest, but every sound made her pause. Her heart raced as she thought of Ryan back at the base. She imagined him surrounded by guards, captured because of her. Guilt sat heavy on her chest, but she knew she could not return. If she went back, they would catch her too, and then Ryan's sacrifice would mean nothing. She had to keep going. As night fell again, the air turned colder. Ilara pulled the dark coat tighter around her. The forest became thicker, and the ground rough under her bare feet. She was exhausted and hungry, but she kept walking. She had no map, no idea where she was, but something inside her told her to keep moving. The coat still smelled faintly of Ryan's cologne, and that scent reminded her that she was not alone. He had cared. He had helped, and now she must survive. After several hours, she reached the edge of a steep hill. At its base, half hidden by thick vines, she noticed a strange metal door. It looked old, rusted, and abandoned. A handle jutted out from one side, and beside it was a broken keypad. Her curiosity pulled her closer. Could this be an old human tunnel? A supply route? A place to hide? She tugged at the handle. It creaked, but did not open easily. She pressed her shoulder against it and pushed harder. Finally, with a loud groan, the door moved. Cold, damp air rushed out, carrying the scent of earth and metal. Inside, a dark tunnel stretched far ahead, disappearing into shadows. Elara hesitated. The tunnel looked dangerous, but so did the forest behind her. If the humans sent search parties, they would surely look in the forest first. They would not. Expect her to go underground. Taking a deep breath, she stepped inside and pulled the door shut behind her. The tunnel was pitch black, and her eyes struggled to adjust. She ran her fingers along the damp walls, feeling their rough surface guide her forward. Her footsteps echoed in the silence, a lonely sound that reminded her just how far from home she truly was. Every few steps, she stopped to listen. The tunnel felt ancient, forgotten. Water dripped from the ceiling, and sometimes she heard scurrying. Sounds small creatures living in the dark. But she kept going. She had no choice. As she walked, she thought about Ryan. His quiet kindness stayed with her like a flame in the dark. She remembered his soft voice, the way he had helped her, and how he had stayed behind so she could run. Why had he done it? She did not understand human ways. Were they all cruel except for him? Or were there more like him hidden among the enemy ranks? After walking for what felt like hours, she reached a junction where the tunnel split into two paths. She hesitated. Both paths looked the same, dark, narrow, and damp. She closed her eyes and listened. From one tunnel, she heard the soft sound of wind, like fresh air coming from far away. The other tunnel was completely silent. She chose the path with the sound of wind, hoping it would lead her out. Her legs ached, and hunger gnawed at her stomach, but she pressed on. The tunnel sloped downward, curving left and right, making it impossible to tell how far she had traveled or how deep underground she now was. Suddenly, a noise behind her made her freeze. A distant clang, metal against metal. Her breath caught in her throat. Were the humans already searching the tunnels? Had they tracked her this far? Panic surged inside her, but she forced herself to stay calm. She crouched low and listened. The sound did not come again. Maybe it was just a loose pipe or an animal. Still, fear pressed against her ribs as she rose slowly and continued forward. The tunnel became narrower, and soon she had to crouch to fit. The damp walls brushed against her shoulders. Water pooled at her feet, soaking her thin shoes. She was shivering from cold and fear, but she refused to stop. Finally, she saw something ahead, of faint glow. A light moved faster, crawling now as the tunnel grew even smaller. The light grew brighter, and soon she could see where it was. Coming from an old vent in the tunnel wall, with moonlight shining through cracks in the metal. Her heart leaped. She was close to the surface again. She reached the vent and pushed at it. The old screws were rusted, but they gave way with effort. One by one, she loosened them, her fingers raw from the work. When the last screw dropped, she pushed the vent open and crawled out into the night air. She lay on the grass, breathing deeply, staring at the stars above her. She had made it out of the tunnel, but she was far from safe. Somewhere behind her, Ryan was still in danger, and she still did not know where she was or how to get home. But for now, she was alive. She was free. And in her mind, Ryan's voice echoed softly, "You are not my enemy." That thought gave her strength. She sat up, wiped her tears, and looked at the dark hills around her. She had survived the prison, the chase, and the tunnel. She would survive what came next too. Elara stood up and began walking again, her body weak, but her heart stronger than ever. Elara moved carefully through the dark hills, her feet sore, her legs weak. The night air was cold, and she felt every scratch and bruise on her body. The forest behind her had vanished into darkness, and before her lay open fields and rocky hills. She didn't know where she was, but she knew she had to keep moving, far away from the base. She could not let Ryan's sacrifice be wasted. As the moon rose higher, she saw something in the distance, a small building at the base of a hill. It looked abandoned, the roof half broken and walls cracked with age. But near its side was something that caught her attention, a heavy metal door built into the hill itself. It was old, rusted, and half hidden by tall grass. She felt a strange sense of hope. Maybe this was a forgotten passage. An old exit the humans no longer guarded. Her body trembled with exhaustion, but she forced herself forward. When she reached the door, she pulled at the handle. It was stuck tight, rust locking it in place. She looked around for anything that could help and found a broken metal rod lying nearby. With shaking hands, she jammed it between the door and frame and pushed. With all her strength, the metal groaned loudly, and finally, the door creaked open a few inches. Alara squeezed inside, pulling the door shut behind her. The space beyond was a narrow tunnel again, but this one was different. It smelled of dust and metal, not damp earth. The walls were lined with pipes and cables, some of them sparking faintly. She could see old signs on the walls, written in human language. This was part of their base once, maybe an old escape route or storage passage. As she walked carefully forward, her footsteps echoed in the empty space. Her body wanted to rest, but her mind was sharp with fear. She knew the humans would not give up their search. She needed to find a way out and fast. Then she heard something ahead. Voices. 2 human soldiers stood near a sealed bulkhead at the far end of the tunnel, their rifles slung across their backs. They were laughing, talking loudly, unaware that she was nearby. The bulkhead was the last door, her only exit. Her heart raced as she crouched behind a pile of crates. She watched them closely, waiting for a chance to move. She had no weapon, no way to fight them. If they saw her, it would be over. She would be captured again or worse. She thought of Ryan, his calm eyes, his quiet voice, the way he had helped her escape. He had trusted her to survive. She could not fail him now. She searched the crates beside her and found a small metal can. It was empty, but heavy enough to make noise. She smiled softly to herself and took a deep breath. With all her strength, she tossed the can down the tunnel in the opposite direction. It clattered loudly as it rolled and bounced. The 2 soldiers jumped in surprise. "What was that?" one of them said. The other raised his rifle. "Go check it out," he ordered. As they moved toward the sound, Alara slipped silently from her hiding place. She ran quietly to the bulkhead and searched for the lock mechanism. It was an old keypad, its lights flickering weakly. She remembered watching Ryan enter codes before simple 4-digit numbers. Her mind raced, thinking quickly. What code would Ryan use? She pressed numbers at random, her fingers trembling. The keypad beeped angrily at first. Wrong code. Wrong? Again. Then she took a deep breath and tried one more time. She pressed 0427 the day she had first arrived at the base. Maybe Ryan would have chosen that. The light on the keypad turned green. The bulkhead unlocked with a soft click. Her heart jumped. She pulled the door open carefully. Beyond it was another tunnel, but this one was lit faintly by natural light at the far end. An exit. But before she could run through it, a shout rang. Out behind her, the soldiers had seen her. "Stop." One of them yelled. Elara froze for a second. Then she ran. Bullets hit the metal walls around her, sparks flying as she sprinted down the tunnel. Her lungs burned, but she did not slow down. She could see the light growing brighter. She was almost there. Almost free. One soldier's voice rang out again, furious and panicked. "Close the door. Don't let her out." Elara pushed her body harder than ever before. With a final leap, she threw herself through the opening just as one of the soldiers reached for the controls. The heavy door slammed shut behind her. She fell onto the grass outside, gasping for air, her whole body shaking. Above her, the sky was turning pale blue with the first light of dawn. She had done it. She had passed through the last door. She was free, but she could not forget what had happened. Ryan was behind that door, in that terrible place, paying the price for helping her. She knew that as long as he was trapped, she could never truly be free. She sat on the ground for a long moment, staring at the rising sun. Then she stood slowly, pulling the coat tighter around her shoulders. Her journey was not over. She would survive. She would find her people. And one day, she would come back for him. Elara took her first steps into the new day. Her heart filled with pain, but also with determination. The last door was behind her, but a new path had just begun. Elara walked through the morning light, her body weak, but her mind strong. The air smelled fresh and clean after so many days trapped in darkness. The soft grass beneath her feet felt strange but comforting. Every step she took felt like a small victory, a reminder that she had escaped. She was alive, but she could not stop thinking about Ryan. Every breath she took, every birdsong she heard, reminded her that he was still a prisoner. He had traded his freedom for hers. For hours she moved carefully across the hills and fields, hiding when she heard the distant sound of human vehicles or aircraft. She knew they would still be searching for her, but now she was outside the base. She had a chance, a real chance, to survive. When the sun reached the highest point in the sky, she finally reached the edge of a rocky cliff. From here, she could see far into the distance. To the north, dense forests stretched toward the horizon. To the east, a winding river shone like silver. And far to the west, she could see smoke rise in a small village. She didn't know if it was human or alien, friend or enemy. But she had no choice. She had to keep moving. Her legs ached with every step, but the thought of Ryan kept her going. She remembered his quiet kindness. He had never asked for thanks. He had never explained why he helped her. But he had shown her something she never thought she would see in a human: compassion. By late afternoon, she reached the edge of the forest. The trees gave her cover and shade, and she finally allowed herself to rest for a while. She sat beneath a wide tree, pulling Ryan's coat tighter around her thin body. She closed her eyes and listened to the sounds of nature, the rustle of leaves, the chirp of small creatures. It was peaceful, but her mind was restless. She thought of the last words Ryan had said before he pushed her toward freedom. "You are not my enemy." Those words echoed in her heart. She had believed humans were cruel, violent, and hateful. But Ryan had been different. His actions had changed her entire view of them. Suddenly, she heard a noise, a faint hum in the sky. She looked up and saw a small drone flying above the treetops. Her heart leaped with fear. Were they still searching for her? Did they know where she was? Quickly, she hid beneath the thick branches and waited for the drone to pass. When it was gone, she made a decision. She could not keep running forever. She needed help. She needed to find her people. In the next 2 days, Elara carefully traveled through the forest, moving only at night and hiding during the day. She ate berries and drank from small streams. Her body grew weaker, but her mind stayed sharp. She remembered every lesson she had learned during her training as a scout before her crash. Survival was about patience, care, and hope. Finally, on the third night, she saw something she could not believe: a small alien ship resting in a clearing. Her people. The ship's lights glowed softly, and a familiar symbol marked its side, the mark of her homeworld. Elara rushed forward, her heart racing. Two guards stepped out from the shadows, weapons raised, but when they saw her, their eyes widened in shock. She fell to her knees, exhausted and trembling. "I am Ilara," she whispered. "I escaped, but a human helped me." The guards helped her to her feet and brought her inside the ship. Warmth surrounded her, and for the first time since her capture, she felt truly safe. Inside the ship, Ilara told her story. She described everything: her capture, her days in the cell, Ryan's strange kindness, and the night of their escape. The officers listened carefully, their faces serious. When she finished, one of them spoke gently. "You are safe now, Ilara. We will take you home." But Ilara shook her head. "Not yet," she said. "There is something I must do." The officer frowned. "What do you mean?" Ilara looked out the window at the stars beginning to appear in the sky. "A human gave me freedom," she said softly. "Now I must return one day and give him his freedom too." Her words surprised everyone, but she meant them. Ryan had saved her life. He had shown her that not all humans were cruel. He had sacrificed everything for her, and she would not forget him. As the ship lifted off from the clearing and soared into the sky, Ilara felt both sadness and hope. Her journey was not over. The war between humans and her people might still go on, but she knew that there was good in their enemies. Because of Ryan, she watched the planet shrink below her, her thoughts full of memories of the human who had freed her. She whispered quietly to herself, a promise she would never break. "One day, Ryan, I will come back for you. I will set you free." The stars glowed brighter as the ship jumped into space, carrying Ilara home, but her heart was already planning her return.